Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Good Friday evening. We're live and national. Everybody took off except for me. I'm here working the late shift with you. Happy to be with you. And, of course, our phone number, if you want to join us on our late-night national town hall conversation, we continue the tradition started by the late, great Larry King and continued by the legend himself, Jim Bohannon, right here on this program. Open phones across America. You guys get to call in and sound off, and everything goes. 833-482-5337, 8334-Valdez is the phone number. And a bunch of things I want to get into tonight. We have some excellent conversations that we're going to have tonight. We're going to talk about the IRS head stepping down. Of course, we're going to talk about Good Friday and the implications, what that looks like in America today. President Trump, of course, making some comments regarding Good Friday yesterday, and we're going to bring you some of those as well. And there's a couple of headlines I want to share with you because I think there's, it's important to go over some of these things, right? One of the things that happened today, you got Judge Boasberg himself admitting that he lacks the authority to stop deportation flights under the Alien Enemies Act. We'll get into that shortly. You've got a member of Tim Walz's administration has been arrested for allegedly causing $20,000 in damage to, guess what? Teslas. Unbelievable. You can't make this stuff up. And the great one, Mark Levin, has been appointed by President Trump to the Homeland Security Advisory Council. We'll be getting to that in a moment as well. So plenty to discuss. And, of course, Senator Van Hollen, that the margaritas that were in the video, the photos that were taken with him and Mr. Kilmar Obrego Garcia. And, again, I only saw this because of the tweet from President Bukele, who said, let me see, I can't pull it up fast enough, but he made a very snide remark, and I thought it was very clever. It was really funny. Something about, we dragged this guy out of the death camps and whatnot, letting him know that things aren't so bad in El Salvador anymore, where a U.S. senator can come to see a prisoner and actually get to see him. And the guy was there complete with his baseball cap and civilian clothing. He wasn't in prison garb or anything like that. And the good senator was seen sitting down, having a meal or having a drink with him. It looked like glasses of water with margaritas, with little flowers in them. President Bukele described them as margaritas. And Van Hollen now says that, no, those margaritas, those were placed there by the Salvadorian government, not because we were drinking them. Kind of sounds like Bill Clinton saying, yeah, I smoked, but I didn't inhale. Right? Remember that? That's always funny. Anyway, those are some of the things that are going on here. And I want to get into this stuff a little bit. First, I want to congratulate the great one, Mark Levin, for serving his country yet again. You may remember that Mark Levin was chief of staff to United States Attorney Ed Meese during the Reagan years, and serving President Reagan, serving Attorney General Meese, and went into a fantastic career as a broadcaster and has agreed to serve on this committee. And that's great. I think that's great. And there's a piece on it in the New York Post. I'll share a little bit from it with you because President Trump has appointed Mark Levin from the radio, from Fox News, to lead what he's calling a revamped Homeland Security Advisory Council. Saying, quote, I am proud to announce the formation of my revamped Homeland Security Advisory Council, HSAC, which is comprised of top experts in their field who are highly respected by their peers. He said in a Truth Social post last night. Levin, who is the host of Life, Liberty, and Levin on the Fox News Channel, will be joined by ex-NYPD Detective Bo Dietl, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster, Florida State Senator Joseph Gruters, as well as some others. And the governor is saying it's a great honor to serve along these great people, blah, blah, blah. Under Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem's leadership, HSAC will work hard on developing new policies and strategies to help that group determine border security, deport illegal criminal thugs, and stop the flow of fentanyl coming into the country to make America safe again. Levin, who has publicly criticized some aspects of policies he didn't agree with in recent months regarding Ukraine and things of that nature, quickly thanked the president, writing on X, "What an honor. Thank you, Mr. President." And rightfully so. I think that is an honor. And this should be interesting because few understand the Constitution like the great one, Mark Levin. So let me be amongst the first to congratulate him. Congratulations, sir. Very well deserved. And I'm glad that he agreed to do it because he's got plenty on his plate as it is. So that's that. Now, we move on. Judge Boasberg. Now, good old Judge Boasberg. You know, this is the guy that's been going at it in a head-to-head pissing match with President Trump. Well, he has seems like a little bit of a change of heart here. The administration is looking to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport people, and the judge says, well, he just doesn't have the authority to block them. He declined to issue an order today, blocking any deportations under the Alien Enemies Act, concluding that he lacks the authority to issue nationwide orders after the Supreme Court tossed his order out earlier this month. The decision from the judge came as a DOJ attorney said that the Justice Department officials reserve the right to resume deportation flights as early as Saturday. Lawyers with the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, asked U.S. District Judge James Boasberg to issue a temporary order blocking any imminent Alien Enemies Act deportations, saying the Trump administration was actively busing dozens of men to an airport in Texas to be deported. Well, Boasberg said he was sympathetic to the concern about deportation flights resuming imminently, but said he lacks the authority to issue a nationwide temporary restraining order barring such deportations. The Trump administration last month touched off a legal battle when it invoked the Alien Enemies Act, the wartime authority used to remove non-citizens with little to no due process, to deport 2 plane loads of alleged migrant gang members to the CECOT, the Seacoast mega prison in El Salvador, by arguing that Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua is a hybrid criminal state that's invading the United States, as well as MS-13. Judge Boasberg temporarily blocking such deportations under the Alien Enemies Act before the Supreme Court earlier this month ruled that the Trump administration could resume them because they were legal, and said the detainees must be given due process to challenge their removal. The ACLU argued on Friday that several Venezuelan migrants who are being held in a detention center in Texas are at risk of deportation and have not had adequate notice or enough time to challenge their removals, violating the court's requirement that the men have reasonable time to practice their due process rights. So that's the latest on that. And they just keep going back and forth. And basically, Judge Boasberg saying, I don't have the power, which is what I think the Trump administration argued from the beginning. And yet you still have guys like Senator Van Hollen that are happy to go out there and make a fool of themselves. So we're gonna have some analysis on that, actually, from Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne, who will be joining us in the next edition of our program, not tonight, but of course when we resume on our next episode. Now, what did I want to get into here? There's a lot I want to get into. Obviously, the IRS chief has, I don't know, I guess agreed to go away, right, is the best way to put it. after many differences with the Trump administration. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the importance of Good Friday. We've got plenty to discuss tonight. Lots of excellent guests, lots of good conversation. Of course, your calls, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The new acting head of the IRS is reportedly being ousted after the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent complained that Elon Musk pushed to fill the role without consulting him. Gary Shapley was appointed as IRS Commissioner just days ago, but is already looking at being replaced. Doge reportedly pushed the White House for Shapley to be appointed. Trump gave Bessent his blessing in the decision to oust Shapley. Shapley gained prominence for testifying as part of the Republicans' corruption investigation into Hunter Biden. Bessent himself even promoted Shapley as a reward for his testimony.
Mr. Shapley will serve as the senior deputy for investigations and enforcement. So we'll have them in Treasury. We'll learn what's been going on at the IRS, what's been wrong, how could this Hunter Biden nonsense have happened, and we're going to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone again.
Deputy Treasury Secretary Michael Falkender will now lead the agency on an acting basis. Falkender will become the 5th person to serve in that capacity this year. As the new Trump administration was taking form, Musk pushed for Howard Lutnick to be nominated for Treasury Secretary instead of Bessent. Trump ended up putting Lutnick, who still has disdain for Bessent, in charge of the Commerce Department instead.
That, of course, a report from, the Washington Examiner. So a big shout out to them. Now, I want to bring in our guest, Dennis Kneale. He's the host of the What's Bugging Me podcast, prolific author, and he's with us now. Happy Good Friday, sir.
It's so great to talk to you, Rich. I hope you've been well, my friend.
Thank God. Yes, sir. So I want to get your take on this. Is there more to read into than this apparent dust up, or
Sure.
is it, the beginning of the end for the IRS?
So I've got some intrigue for you. This story and it's an extraordinary story, and it kind of shows you a lot about the way things work now with Musk and Trump. This story broke because of the New York Times, right? The New York Times is the libwit mouthpiece of the Democrat Party. So this was someone disloyal, probably inside the administration, or someone close to the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who wanted to make Elon Musk look bad and show that, Bessent had bested him by getting rid of the guy that Elon Musk wanted to put into that position without asking Bessent's permission. And so that this came from the Times, they think it's a big blow to Elon. And yet, here's the thing, interestingly, once again, and the White House did this before, Rich, when Elon Musk was calling Peter Navarro an idiot, and Peter Navarro was saying that Elon Musk is merely a car assembler and rather than a car builder. And then out came Caroline, sweet Caroline Levitt, who said, we're going to let those two just hash this out. Well, they're kind of doing that here because Bessent gets Trump to fire or remove Shapley, although Shapley will stay inside. He's the whistleblower. He is the 4th acting IRS commissioner since January 20th, and now he'll be replaced by this guy, Falkender. But basically, it's a power struggle. But I think it's going to be just fine. And Elon is new to Washington. He doesn't realize that all of Washington is basically about the 1980s book, Who Moved My Cheese? Leave me alone. I've got my own cheese. Don't be messing with me. And I think that Bessent and his people just basically said, hey, if you'd come to us and asked us for permission or for our approval of Gary Shapley, the whistleblower, as acting commissioner, we would have said, hey, that's cool. But you instead just did it on your own. And Elon Musk probably meant no offense at all. I also wonder whether he cares that much if someone was offended.
Right. Good point, Dennis Kneale. Now, what do you think? So you've got Falconer, who I've interviewed before. He's a very smart guy, good economic mind, but he's just going to oversee it until it's filled. Who do you think is next up to run this place?
Well, they do have a actual nominee that they've announced, and they're waiting for Senate hearings, and he's just kind of lying in wait. So this is really kind of a temporary thing. But what happened is the original IRS Commissioner, Danny Werfel, he honorably steps aside on January 20th because there's a new administration. Hey, man, you guys go ahead. And so then so he steps aside on Inauguration Day. And then in comes this guy, Douglas O'Donnell, and he steps into the acting role, number 2 guy, right, suddenly. But he gets upset. He's a 40-year veteran, this Douglas O'Donnell, but he quits because DOJ is demanding access to IRS records and IRS
I remember that one.
So he quits, and he's replaced by Melanie Krause, who's now the 3rd director since January. And she ends up resigning over another kind of data sharing with Department of Homeland Security. And on my podcast, What's Bugging Me, this week, you can hear the CNN anchor going after some Trump official saying, are you going to be using this data to go after illegal aliens? For child tax credit. Illegal aliens do not get anything, okay? And yet there are illegal aliens getting child tax credits, getting thousands of dollars from the government. And the CNN anchor was outraged that you would dare use IRS records to find this out. What's so wrong with that? So Melanie Krause resigned over that. She was then replaced by this Gary Shapley, this former. I love this, don't you, Rich? That the Trump
it sounds to me, Dennis Kneale,
the Mavericks and put them in charge of the very agencies that the Mavericks were decrying.
Dennis Kneale, it almost sounds like there may not be anybody to run this place, and they might just have to shut it down. What do you think the chances are?
0. As much as
Too
I
much
would
money,
love to
right?
start that revolution with you. I saw a tweet the other day on the IRS by Peter Schiff. Peter Schiff manages, probably
What do you
several
think of
$100
Peter
million
Schiff?
in
I
money.
played a clip from him the other day, and I was tremendously underwhelmed.
Peter has gotten red-pilled. And turned more conservative. But the problem is Peter's been long on stocks for about 20 years. And he's been in favor of gold now. Finally, gold in the last 3 years has soared. It's at $3,300 an ounce. That is inflation adjusted. That is where the price of gold was in 1980. Finally, in the last 3 years, gold has rocketed to finally get to where it was in 1980. And you finally matched inflation. And that's all good. But Peter's brilliant. He's much better on this stuff than I am. And he tweeted on this about income tax. It's April 15th, and once again we go through this illusion that we have to pay taxes when really there's no law that says we have to. Well, Peter Schiff's father went to prison for preaching exactly that message. I think he may have gotten out.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more when we return. Folks, we're coming right back with Dennis Kneale. He's the host of What's Bugging Me, former anchor at Fox Business Channel. He's a former editor at Forbes Magazine. You don't want to miss this. I'll be right back with Dennis Kneale. It's Rich Valdez.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if a viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez live with you this Good Friday evening. We are live and national, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And I want to continue our conversation with our buddy Dennis Kneale, former editor at Forbes Magazine, former anchor at Fox News. He's the host of the What's Bugging Me podcast. And Dennis Kneale, when we look at what's happening in the IRS, this revolving door, this cavalcade of characters, I think it begs the question, will the president do similar and maybe get rid of the Fed, or at least the chair of the Fed? Now, I know you can't just get rid of them, but Trump says he can ask him to leave. Listen to this.
On Jerome Powell, you said that the termination of Jerome Powell cannot come fast enough. He says he won't leave even if you ask him to.
Oh, he'll leave. If I ask him to, he'll be out of there. But
do you believe
I don't think he's. I don't think he.
trying to do that?
I don't think he's doing the job. He's too late. Always too late. A little slow, and I'm not happy with him. I let him know it, and if I want him out, he'll be out of there real fast. Believe me.
Believe me. Now, I tend to believe President Trump. Dennis Kneale, what do you think?
Okay, so I want all of you out there, please remember this. Remember that you heard this here first from Rich Valdez's show. The media and the Democrats will now clutch their pearls. They will worry about the constitutional crisis. They will worry about the independence of the Fed. A president isn't supposed to interfere. Okay, when actually Senator Elizabeth Warren, one of the Democrats making this point today, I believe, a few weeks ago when the Fed was getting ready to cut rates by, a half a point, twice as much as you usually cut, she came out ahead of time and said they should be cutting 3/4 of a point, as if Pocahontas knows. So when she did it, it's not threatening the independence of the Fed. But now that Trump has said this, it is. And what I love about this, Rich, is Trump's merely telling you exactly what he's thinking. He's not kind of being subtle, and now you've got to read the signs and go to his spokesman off the record and find out what he really meant. He's saying, no, he will make the guy's life miserable. Let's remember, Trump appointed him. The guy replaced Janet Yellen at the Fed. And the Fed went 8 years of Obama, 8 years, and raised rates once, and I think it was October before the November election that led to Trump. That's all. Trump gets elected. He's talking about growing the economy. He's cutting regulations. I think 16 regulations he cut for every one new regulation at one point. And the economy starts to grow 50% faster than it had on average in the previous 10 years. And the Fed under Powell, Jerome Powell, the guy that Trump himself appointed, the Fed raises rates a total of 7 to 9 times in just the 4 years of Trump, when there was no sign of inflation at all. Inflation stayed way below 2%. So what are you talking about? I feel the Fed is a political animal. It turns out Thomas H. Lee Partners, a hedge fund, private equity fund, just put out a chart. 92% of the political donations made by Fed employees go to Democrats. So it is a biased Democrat organization. I think it's a political animal, even though I'm sure Steve Leisman, an amazing Fed expert at CNBC, would disagree, as would John Hilsenrath, who covered the Fed for the Wall Street Journal for many years. But I just think it is a political animal. I think they don't want Trump to succeed. I think Powell dislikes Trump. And how dare Trump say what he's saying? And let me just tell you guys, I'm really glad Trump is saying what he's saying.
Wow. Well, yeah, listen, a lot of interesting analysis there, Dennis Kneale. I agree with you. I think I believe Trump, when he speaks that confidently, I believe, he knows what he's talking about. He knows where the bodies are buried. I also believe that the Fed is a political animal, and we ought to take steps to follow Ron Paul's lead to end the Fed. I don't know if that happens right now or in the immediate future, but I think it needs to. What's your thought on the likelihood of the Fed going away?
Again, zero. Because no federal entity, once it has begun and once it is funded, ever will go out of existence. I will be amazed if we're able to keep the education department dead. I think it's going to be like Jason in Friday the 13th. It's going to be coming back to life in one way or another. Look at what's happening in Washington right now. I mean, look at, Trump was elected to try to kind of attack this, right? And you have people like Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent opposing DOGE efforts, because now that he's in charge, that's his thief. That's his budget line. And if he loses spending authority, he loses power. And so that's been the problem with Washington for 40 years.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to fix the problem with Washington, right? I think that's part of the reason Trump gets elected. So I'm hopeful. I'm holding, I'm not going to hold my breath, but I'm definitely holding my fingers crossed behind my back, because I believe
the great thing is, by even discussing it, Rich, by your even bringing it up, by people even thinking it might be possible, that puts that signal out into the universe. That changes reality. It changes the things that happen because of it. Trump understands this better than anyone. Trump ends up saying something like, hey, NATO, what? You're in Europe right there next to Russia, but we're paying way more for your defenses than you are. How about you start to even up and step up? And it's a international crisis, and Trump doesn't understand, but it utterly changed the entire debate, and Europe started to step up. Trump says something like, Greenland, we're liking the rare earth metals, and you're being utterly ignored. We really ought to just kind of take you over. It may not happen, but the entire agenda and conversation changes just because he put it out there in the universe. And you, by saying, wait a minute, what about this idea? Rand Paul, he's no crazy. He says, end the Fed. Could we do it? What is it like? I love that you're putting it out in the universe and you're changing reality right there just by bringing it up.
Well, thank you for the kudos, but let me tell you, I really do believe it can happen. I think we're a lot closer than we were 5 years ago, than we were 10 years ago. It doesn't seem that fringe of an idea, but we're going to continue that conversation. Dennis Kneale, stick with me if you can. We're going to come right back with Dennis Kneale talking about some of the economic news of the day. Straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, we're heading into Easter weekend. It's Good Friday nighttime with me, Rich Valdez. We're live. We're national. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. Taking your calls momentarily, but we're going to wrap up with Dennis Kneale here. And former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, says that Trump's tariffs are going to be historic in the long run. Listen to this.
What's your general opinion of the new tariff policy?
Oh, look, I think in the long run it's going to be historic. He's doing something that needed to be done. The Davos World Order kind of program didn't work. Putting China in the World Trade Organization didn't work. And countries, including the European Union, rigged the game against America, both in tax policy and in various regulatory policies. So he's doing the right thing by shaking it all up. Now we have to see whether or not the Secretary of the Treasury can go around and negotiate good deals. If they can, we'll look back on this as a historic turning point in recentering the world economy on the United States and in rebuilding the American industrial base in a way that enables us to continue to lead the world for the next century.
Dennis Kneale, you've heard former Speaker Newt Gingrich there, somebody I like, I know, I think he's usually spot on, somebody I respect. What do you think?
I've met the man, and I think he is spot on. About these tariffs, we need to understand a couple of things. What this really is, rather than a tariff on the rest of the world, this is a trade war of us versus China. This is, as Jim Iorio, an options trader who came on my podcast this past week, talks about this is like a Western when it's down to two last gunfighters against each other after an army on each side has been slayed, and it's down to the last two guys. This is the U.S. versus China. Let's also understand that for 30 years, we've been the big daddy. And, hey, we're only going to put a 2.5% tariff on anyone coming into the U.S., but you go ahead and tariff our stuff 100%, 200%, 30%, whatever, everywhere else. And as such, Rich, we end up spending $1 trillion more every year overseas on other stuff than they spend on our stuff. 400 billion of that, $1 trillion that we give to them more than they spend on our stuff, 400 billion is China. China then takes that 400 billion, invests it in U.S. government bonds so that we now are borrowing with new bonds bought by China to pay interest to China with the money that we gave them that they used to buy the bonds.
Unreal. So ultimately, I agree. Now, I want to run another idea by you because you are the financial guru here with your days at Forbes and Fox Business. And you were at CNBC at one point, right, back in the days?
Yes. I had my own solo anchor show at 8 o'clock at night after the meltdown, April 09. For 6 glorious months, I was so happy. I was drunk with power. And then they canceled it for reruns on documentaries on porn and pot. And they got like triple the audience.
You're funny, Dennis Kneale. Well, anyway, my thinking here is this. The tariff strategy is not really a tariff strategy, but more so a consequence strategy, because I think the ultimate goal here is to have no tariffs, right? That's the end goal. The best case scenario is a situation where we don't have tariffs. Do you think I'm right in presenting it that way?
I think that's a pretty smart read. I mean, 75 countries, including big trading partners like Korea, South Korea, Japan, as well as Australia, Argentina, Cambodia, Vietnam, 75 countries since the Trump tariffs came out have come to the U.S. to say, dude, all right, yes, we have been, blocking your products, and yes, we have been charging vastly more for U.S. products to come into our countries, but we're willing to go to 0-0. And what would happen then if we can build up factories here and bring back jobs, because something like, 8 million, 10 million factory jobs left overseas, 90,000 factories and warehouses shuttered, the Trump administration has said. But if you no tariffs on all those U.S. products, because, as it said, you see plenty of Japanese and Korean cars in the U.S., but you don't see U.S. cars in Japan and Korea and Europe. You see plenty of German cars in the U.S., and it's because of those tariffs. They've always tariffed us far more. But now if we're 0-0 or much lower, maybe those U.S. plants could make a lot more stuff and sell not just to the U.S. customers, but sell in the rest of the world. The big obstacle is the one real enemy, China. China has demanded ownership of U.S. Subsidiaries that want to operate in the country. We want to stay. It's demanded access to U.S. technology and IP. China steals IP, and it's been doing it for 30 years. And the thing about Trump is, this is not a new fad. This guy was saying this in the 80s. I helped the late Lou Dobbs, former Fox anchor.
What a legend, Lou Dobbs. Love Lou Dobbs.
Well, I loved him, and I helped him write his book, The Trump Century, and we do a whole chapter on tariffs. And in research, I found a 1985 or 1987 interview with a young Donald Trump for a pilot that never aired for a gossip columnist called Rona Barrett, who was this kind of platinum short-haired blonde, or Nikki Barrett, Rona Barrett, and she was interviewing him, and he gave all of these same views about Japan ripping us off, about unfair trade. Back then, as he says today, he believes this, he's doing it, and he is freed, isn't he, Rich, by the fact that this is his second term, and even though he trolls people by saying, I don't know, maybe I could take a third term without violating the Constitution. Yeah, I think he's just trying to make the media chase their tails on that.
Of course.
He knows, and therefore he doesn't have to worry quite as much. He's ready to set out J.D. Vance on his own. It's up to you to get reelected. I got to do what I got to do.
Yeah, spot on, brother. Spot on. I like to say it's it's like people who use the laser pointer to keep their cats busy. That's what he does with the media with stuff like that. Just lets them go run around.
That's good. I like that one better than chase their own tails.
Well,
yours is a cat reference,
do.
and mine was a dog reference. Yeah.
But ultimately, I think that's all true. And you know what? It's funny. When I interviewed Trump on this program, I played a clip of one of those interviews. It was an interview he did with Larry King, who was Jim Bohannon's predecessor, and he was talking about that. He was talking about how we're getting ripped off by, at that time, Japan, and how many different deals didn't make sense. And if it shows nothing more than Donald Trump being remarkably consistent, right? You're talking about not 1 or 2 decades, 3 or 4 decades, right? Going on 5 decades of preaching the same stuff, singing the same song. And ultimately, I think it brings us to this place where you've got to kind of just stop and say, all right, look, I may not agree with a lot of this stuff, but the guy knows what he's talking about. He's been very consistent. We should give it a shot. And I think, we're very close to that 100 days, right? It's about time that,
we're at 88.
Yeah, right. We give him
We're
a
at
chance.
88 days. Yeah.
It's amazing how much criticism has been lobbed at Trump, and he's still in the honeymoon period, Dennis Kneale.
He sure is. Well, you know what he has done with the help of his BFF, best friends for now, Elon Musk. I mean, they've been able to push the Democrats into defending some of the stupidest, most reviled policies. My gosh, Trump will come out and say, I think I'm against using government money to pay for sex change operations for men who say they're women and they want to get into a women's prison. And suddenly the Democrats are going to file a lawsuit to stop that effort, to block that. I mean, it's just example after example. The Democrats now, they've cozied up to this Kilmar, Abrego Garcia, as in Kilmar. Remember the Eddie Murphy sketch? Kill my landlord, kill my landlord. They've suddenly championing him when it turns out, did you see the photo of this guy's hand where the symbols, apparently there's a marijuana leaf for M, and then there's something else that's for S, and basically it equates to MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles, and we've got a Maryland senator going there to sit there with him and have coffee. I mean, the world's upside down. The Democrats look like idiots again and again, and I'm a registered Democrat.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that, Dennis Kneale. Dennis Kneale, let everybody know how they can get a copy of your book, where they go to get your podcast, and make it snappy.
So the leadership genius of Elon Musk, 11 Lessons of Elon to Live a Better Life, baby, on Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble. Also check me out at Dennis Kneale, Kneale on X, and my podcast, What's Bugging Me, on Ricochet, the great and growing conservative network. Subscribe and take part in the right conversation. Rich Valdez, you are so good at what you do. Guys, I do this show with him on Newsmax, Wise Guys, and he blows me off the stage every time. He's smart, he's articulate, and he's truly irritating.
You're too much, brother. Dennis Kneale, thank you so much. God bless you. Happy Easter. And amigos, we're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company all night long. It's Good Friday. Straight ahead, we're going to have a conversation about Good Friday and President Trump's comments about Easter. He brought Franklin Graham to the White House. We're going to talk about all of that straight ahead, plus more conversation. And, of course, your calls, 833-4-VALDEZ. Keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez, and we're coming right back. Hasta la próxima.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? It's Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be with you this Good Friday evening. And, of course, it's 7 minutes past the hour. We're live and national on stations all across the country. Happy to be here with you. It's really an honor and a pleasure. It's a blessing. And our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Of course, it is Good Friday, and we're going to get into that and what that means and what that looks like. President Trump sharing some thoughts about his faith and about the role of Christianity and Easter, the resurrection in American life. We're going to have some conversation around that with one of the more popular pastors in my neck of the woods. Actually, it's a church I go to, but I say that not because he's my pastor. I say that because this was a little tiny church, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. And today has about 5,000 parishioners every weekend. And they've had to move to, at one point, they were doing services on Saturdays, multiple opportunities to visit the church on Sundays. Really is an interesting growth situation that we're seeing there. It's something I hadn't seen before. So we're going to see what's going on there with Pastor Anthony Fleming. That's coming up in a little bit. But first, I want to get into some of the news of the day because, of course, Trump making it easier to fire federal workers, not the least of which is one of the federal workers who just stepped down, I should say, the head of the IRS, marking the third IRS person since Trump took office. If that doesn't say, hey, we're looking to get rid of this, I don't know what we call that, department, division, whatever it is. I don't know what does, right? But that's the message I get. We don't want the IRS. I say, end the Fed, kill the IRS, kill the DOE. We're on track. We're right on track. The smaller the government, the way better it is. Anyway, we also have, there was an interesting story I saw this morning, and I thought, man, I've got to talk about this. There's a New York Times editor, former New York Times editor, that broke down in tears, apologizing to who? You betcha, Sarah Palin at a defamation trial. And I thought that was great. Now, I don't think she's buying it. But a former opinion page editor of the New York Times broke down in tears and apologized to Sarah Palin while testifying in court over a 2017 editorial that she says was defamatory. James Bennett testified on Thursday that he blew it when he falsely claimed in the editorial that he wrote that the former Alaska governor's political action committee had contributed to an atmosphere of violence in the weeks and months leading up to the 2011 assassination attempt on then Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. And the quote here is, the Times has acknowledged the editorial was inaccurate, but quickly said it corrected the, quote, honest mistake. Was it an honest mistake? That's the part I don't know anybody's buying. A lawyer brought him a box of tissues as he testified for a second day at the defamation trial, saying, I did, and I do apologize to Governor Palin for this mistake, Bennett said. Before the lunch recess, United States District Court Jed Rakoff told attorneys that Bennett had delivered a heartfelt and moving apology to Palin. Palin, who was seen with her former New York Rangers player and boyfriend, Ron Duguay, by her side earlier this week, appeared unconvinced, according to the Associated Press. As she exited the courthouse, she dismissed the apology and pointed to the length of time since the editorial's publication and its correction, which occurred within a day. She said, let's see, how many years ago was the untruth? She asked, then declined to elaborate before getting into a car bound for the airport. The testimony, of course, unfolded as Bennett and the New York Times are facing trial for the second time over this defamation suit regarding Palin. So good. I'm glad to see people pushing back on the fake news media for doing what they do in the fake news. That's all I could say is good on them. All right? You reap what you sow. What else? What do you have here? Democrats continue to melt down, and most of them can't even answer why they want non-citizens to vote in U.S. elections, but I could answer it for them. If anybody cares to ask me, I can tell you the real reason for that is they can't get Americans to vote for them. That's pretty much it. But there's an exclusive in the Daily Caller indicating that the reason here, according to Democrats, or at least 1 in 4, so a quarter of Democrats, joined Republicans to pass the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, the SAVE Act, which we talked about earlier this week with one of the sponsors of that. But they're not sure why they're doing all that. And I think they do. I think they're just playing coy. So when you hear Democrats saying, well, I don't really know why, I'm not sure, or they refuse to answer, that's the reason why they refuse, because they realize they're up to no good, and they don't want to admit that they're up to no good. And if they're not up to no good, they want to be able to turn a blind eye to the people that are saying, oh, I didn't know that's a problem. I had no idea. Shoot. Jeez. And that's not cool, right? And I think everybody here is past that stage of life, right? That level of naivete has come and gone. The American people know better, and they want better. And that's it. It's that simple. Let us continue. Where else do we go here? Trump ripped Senator Van Hollen for meeting with the deported MS-13 gang member. And that one, I think we do have a little bit of audio on, right? Count Delacula? All right, let's do number 2.
You're talking about Abrego Garcia. Is that the one? Yeah. Is an illegal alien MS-13 gang member and foreign terrorist. This comes out of the State Department and very legitimate sources. I mean, I assume I'm just giving you what they handed to me, but this was supposed to be certified stuff. In 2019, Garcia was issued a deportation order. 2 separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13, which is a gang that may be even worse than Tren de Aragua, and maybe worse. They kill people with knives because it's more painful. Very famous for the knifing and killing of 2 young 16-year-old girls walking to school one day, and they sliced them up into little pieces and killed them. That's MS-13.
That's MS-13. That's what they do. And they are brutal, right? Brutal people. Now, MSNBC was carrying Trump talking about this stuff, right? About how in 2022, Garcia was stopped by the Tennessee Highway Patrol, transporting 7 people from Texas to Maryland, which they believe is human trafficking, driving violently in 2020 and 2021. Of course, Garcia's wife filing for a protective order. There's now some questions about the tattoos on his hand that indicate that he's MS-13. I can tell you I have tattoos. But they don't mean any gang affiliation. You know, mine stand for the red, white, and blue, and for everything that's good and holy. Anyway, amigos, more to come straight ahead. We're going to talk about Good Friday, the resurrection, and so much more. Keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So there's so much to celebrate this Easter. This is really, I hope, going to be one of the great Easters ever, because we have something going that I don't think this country has seen in 100 years. And as we gather with family and friends, we'll not forget the true source of our joy and our strength. America has put our trust in God. It will always be in God we trust. We will never change that.
What's up, America? It's Rich Valdez. So check this out. I want to bring you a very special Good Friday guest. Now, this guy is not just a pastor. He's somebody that has his own personal story, and we're going to get into his story of how he came from Australia to the United States in the next segment, and how he got to discover the missing piece and explode the ministry that God gave him. But right now, I want to get his reaction to some of the things that you just heard President Trump saying about Easter, about the resurrection, as well as the mocking of Christianity and Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live. Welcome, sir. Pastor Anthony Fleming. It's an honor.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Yeah, it's a special time of year, obviously, for Christians, and the media's kind of known for loving to mock Christians. They don't seem to mock many other religions, but they'll definitely mock the faith. I think it's obviously a beautiful thing that we have a fairly bold, well, not a fairly bold, a bold president, someone who's not afraid to say what he believes. It's interesting that so many other people have said what they believe, but they kind of make it very general, I think, and he just goes after it. And to be honest, I think that's refreshing.
I agree. And I think it also kind of tackles the problem that a lot of people think that there should be to borrow a term from a long time ago, a wall between of separation between church and state. And this, I think, is a lie from the enemy, if I can, right? That and saying politics and religion are things you shouldn't talk about. I think those are the two main things you should talk about.
Yeah. Well, it is a fallacy because here's what people often do. They say, I'm not religious, and then therefore they say, I have no beliefs. The essence of religion is belief. And so politics is the outworking of our beliefs. And so you can't not have beliefs in politics because you're saying right, you're saying wrong, you're saying good, you're saying bad. And that is the essence of what we believe. Therefore, it is in essence religious. Now, should we be forcing our religion in essence on people? No, but at the same time, you have to say right and wrong. The Ten Commandments were foundational, obviously, throughout the Western world and created a civil society, a better society, by saying don't lie, don't steal, don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't covet. Those were things that were foundational that help humanity flourish.
Yeah, really well put. And where we are today, right, from your view, and I guess your view is really unique because you weren't born in the United States, and so you have this juxtaposition of living in Australia. But I can tell you, I've seen things go downhill since I was a kid. When I was a kid, I thought everybody was a Christian, right? It was okay to go to church. It was okay to talk about God. As I got older, it was like, oh my gosh, you guys don't do that? What's going on here, right? And it's almost criticized. What's your view? How have you observed that?
Gosh, it's interesting because I came from Australia at 19, went to Liberty University, which was a very
deep dive,
pro-Republican, obviously pro-faith, environment, and that was different for me. Went back to Australia, came back to America, and then I went to conferences and leadership conferences back in the day and really was discouraged from talking ever about politics. But it wasn't until I think the political realm started stepping on areas that I felt was so foundational to life and flourishing that I felt compelled that I had to talk about it. And so when really our governor of New Jersey at that time, and then numerous different people went so left-wing when it came to abortion, for instance, and promoting 9-month abortions, I felt so compelled during that time that I had to talk about it because it was blatantly murderous and a dangerous doctrine. And then the other thing I felt like I had to talk about, which was speaking up for children. And so, as a pastor, someone who's dealt with sometimes people's problems for over 20 years, on a discipleship level, on a counseling level, on a marital level, not just what I've dealt with, but also what many other pastors have dealt with, and even just people who are trying to help people navigate what I'd call soulish wounds of the past, to then somehow dive in. I don't know how we fell in love with this, but it was a spiritual thing. We somehow fell in love to placate to such a degree. Here's what I'd say. It's like we fell in love with compassion but lost our conviction. So instead of being just compassionate to the individual, we said we're going to overplay that and we're going to literally bring in a doctrine of confusion to young children. And so when people started talking about gender neutrality and teaching that in education sphere, there was something in me that I couldn't be silent as a father, as a child of God, as a pastor. And so I feel like I had to talk about some of those things. And actually what I found was I was stepping into sometimes on some people's toes, but what actually happened was it caused Christians to be bolder. It caused them to say, yeah, that's right. We need to stand up for these things. And so there was this, it was an interesting time because for me around that time, it was also around COVID and different stuff. And it felt like there was so many voices and all the voices of social media. But I remember praying one day and on my way to church, and I felt like there were so many voices, and I just felt really convicted that I was to keep building strong men, and then I was to speak up for children. And so that has been one of the things that I've talked about. And so I think it's important that Christians see the weightiest matters of the law, the weightiest things in Scripture, which Jesus talked about in Matthew 23:23. And he said, if we will weigh what is weightiest, we will know how to navigate our faith, our life, our voting, our government decisions. We'll know it through the lens of Scripture.
Pastor Anthony Fleming, would you say that this conviction that you got was because you were a pastor or simply because you were a father and a believer?
First it's Son of God, right? First, it's I'm forgiven. I'm meant to be a reflection of Jesus. So that should be primary. And obviously, the amount of time you spend in Scripture should obviously form in you something. Right. If you just look simply at the 10 Commandments and you look through them and read them out loud, and then you see policies and government officials that seem to attack them at every moment, you go, well, it doesn't matter how good you sound. It doesn't matter how flowery your words are. Mm-hmm. You're attacking the foundations of what is Christianity, the faith, America. And so I just felt like I had to be bold there. And as a father, I did begin to imagine, like, my own son, if he was 5, 6, 7, my own daughter, 6, 7, 8 years old, and then teachers introducing dangerous thoughts to them. Like there's certain things that we don't understand as adults, but then to go and introduce those thoughts as a young child just violates every bit of common sense, every bit of wisdom that I can think of. And as again, someone who's pastored people over the years, your sexual wounds, I'll put it that way, your childhood wounds, they carry for years and years. So I felt like that was a doctrine that was basically from Satan. There's no other way to say it. And it was evil. And I think Christians I still think Christians actually have to be bolder and clearer on some of those things, while at the same time being loving and gracious to the individual, but standing up for what is true.
Love the sinner, hate the sin.
Yeah, not easy to do, and that's why you need grace. That's why you need mercy, and that's why you need to literally say, Jesus, help me, because sometimes you will start to hate someone because they're carrying a certain ideology that's not the Spirit at all. But in your own walk with God, you've got to bring that to God.
Outstanding. Straight ahead, folks, we're going to continue our conversation with Pastor Anthony Fleming from Church Alive in New Jersey, and we're going to talk about Good Friday, the death and the upcoming resurrection. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
3 days later, Christ's followers found the empty tomb. Jesus had defeated darkness and death and promised new life to all of humankind. And that's what we celebrate each year at Easter as we joyfully proclaim on Sunday, He is risen. The death and resurrection of Jesus are the essence of the Christian faith. Whether rich or poor, healthy or sick, young or old, or in times of peace or war, Christians everywhere find solace and hope in the knowledge that Christ died for them and that they could be united with Him in heaven. And that's what we want. That's what we all want. The miracles of Holy Week set in motion a transformation in human existence. Countless millions of Americans have been moved by Christ's example to heal the sick, defend their families, lift up their communities, and make our country stronger, better, and greater than ever before.
What's up, America? It's Rich Valdez. Welcome back. Happy Good Friday to everybody. And listen, I wanted to do something special. We always, for Christmas, for Good Friday, for those types of things, we always talk about the importance of these holidays. And there's, we just heard the comments from President Trump referencing his faith and why we acknowledge the resurrection on Easter. But I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the role Christianity's playing in America. I want to talk about society and culture, and I want to do it with somebody who's Australian, right? An Australian guy. He graduated from the same college that my daughter just graduated from, Liberty University. Shout out to the Flames. And he's also my pastor, Pastor Anthony Fleming from Church Alive. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, great to be here, my friend. Great to be here. It really is.
So let's start there. How do we end up with this big sound the alarm? How do we end up with this big church that's slowly growing or quickly growing in Bergen County, New Jersey?
Yeah.
With a guy that was in Australia not that long ago saying, I'm not going to be in the ministry.
Right.
How does that happen?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So when I'm 19, I go to Liberty University. A year before, I really had kind of a reawakening in my faith, to be honest, and had always had this desire to go play college tennis, and that was the door that got opened for me at Liberty University. While I'm there, praying one day, felt called to preach, felt like God had put purpose in my heart in a big way. End up meeting my wife there. She's from New Jersey, and so we get married a couple of years later. And in 2004, and we were actually in Australia at the time, she had just finished Hillsong College. We just got married, and her father, who was a Portuguese-speaking pastor in Jersey, asked us, hey, do you want to start something here? And to be honest, we kind of said no, but we prayed about that next 30 days and just felt like it was an open door and, hey, let's step into it. And so we were kind of laboring away what we felt like God had given us a dream to reach people for Christ, to take them on a journey of a discipleship, to see life transformation in them, and then lead their families in a stronger, better way. And I think over time that just became really our passion. It became of a thing that we felt like God had given us. And it's been interesting to see the last 6 years, to be honest, because it was slow growth until about 6 years ago, until I felt like the Lord gave me something a bit unique, which was around specifically speaking to men and really helping them get unstuck. And we now call it the 4 pillars of life: spiritual, physical, relational, financial. And we challenge men specifically there, and the ladies grabbed that. And out of that has come a lot of growth and a lot of really good things.
This is quite a story. So you start this church again at the suggestion of your father-in-law. Says, hey, let's, you guys want to get into ministry. You're like, I don't know. Let me think about it. I'll pray about it.
Yeah.
And at what point do you get this vision? Was it later? Was it early on that there's going to be this massive mega church growing in Jersey?
Well, I hate the word mega church, so I will say that. So
I'll join you.
I would say it's a growing church. To me, mega is 10, 20,000 people.
You're almost there.
But anyway, good things are happening, and it's encouraging. I would say this, that revelation or insight or vision, those 3 words, you can use either one, it is progressive. When I was called by God to preach at 19, 20, 21, I did feel like in prayer numerous different times, I felt like I literally saw by faith large things is the best way to describe it. So when we really took a long time to grow, I would say we were 5 years in, 150 people. There was definitely some discouragement around that because we felt like something much larger had been placed in us and it just wasn't happening, you know. But we kept going to leadership conferences. We kept trying to be faithful with what we had. We kept building our team, building the culture. And then over time, I do think you start to see, man, what is your lane? Your lane of ministry? What is the flavor of church that you're meant to be? And I think it was when the Lord really gave me Men's Transform, that the flavor that I felt like matched probably the best with my personality, my gifting, my skill set, my even background
Who God made you to be.
Yeah, in college tennis, in coaching tennis, in athletics and so forth. I feel like I wasn't very pastoral, as in, like, you didn't want to come and meet me for counseling, if you know what I mean. I found counseling boring. I didn't want counseling, but I found stirring people to be more seemed to be my lane and what I felt like I was meant to do.
I love that. So you said it transcends, right? The vision, the idea kind of changes.
Yeah.
And that's when you found this linchpin, if you will. It was focusing on men, men being the foundation of the family, and realizing that's how you grow. You focus on men, and it happened about 6 years ago. Do you think there was something missing? And I don't mean missing in a detrimental way. I mean missing. Like for years, I tried to lose weight. And it something eventually worked for me. And I don't even know what it is. I think maybe it was really just learning how to count carbs.
Right.
But outside of that...
carbs will kill you, man.
Yeah, they will, right? You don't know. You're drinking them, you're eating them. But something eventually made sense to me, and I said, this is it. And it sounds like that was that moment for you. But was that the only part that you were missing or in getting to men, or was there some other lesson that you needed to learn yet to get you to that stage?
Yeah. There definitely was a big aha moment, literally in my backyard. I felt this phrase is the best way to describe it, pierced my heart: help men win in life. 5 words: help men win in life. And it was like that aha moment became a moment where I felt like I saw the culture we needed. I, to be honest, was a bit frustrated at our own small groups at the time. They were okay. They weren't multiplying. They weren't growing. They weren't producing something what I would call vibrant or strong. But for 10 years as a pastor, I kept hearing the same 4 prayer requests. Something in the physical realm, the health, something in your finances, my career, my money's a mess, something in my relationship, whether it's a broken marriage, whether it's just relational drama, and then obviously faith questions. And so those 4 areas were almost in every single prayer request we ever got. So I'm like, wait, we don't so much have a prayer problem. We might have a application problem, or we might have a wisdom problem. And then one day, just reading scripture, Proverbs 3:15 and 16 jumped off the page, so to speak. It says, long life is in her right hand. It says, in her left hand are riches and honor. And so Proverbs 3, or the entire book, is about seeking wisdom. But Proverbs 3 talks about, as you seek wisdom, here's the fruit. And the fruit is long life, that's your health, riches, your relationship to career and money, and honor. Honor can only come from 2 places, God or people. And so what I saw in that was, in the hands of wisdom is the management of these 4 buckets that everyone was talking about. And so out of that, and then there's this very unique, not unique actually, very known scripture that most people know, to be honest, especially pastors. Luke 2:52, Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, favor with God, favor with man. And in those 4 areas is actually the 4 areas of life. And so we said, man, where are men stuck? Where men are sometimes stuck physically, often stuck relationally. Many times if they're doing well financially, the relational bit or the spiritual bit doesn't seem to gel. And then you meet guys who are amazing in their faith, amazing in relationships, but the other disciplines are really missing often in their world. And so I felt like we saw that we needed not just a culture of grace, we needed a culture of growth. And so we had to challenge men individually to get vision in those 4 areas. And then we had to hold them accountable and said, man, you said you wanted to grow here. So we are actually building a brotherhood that helps you win in life. And then at the same time, these 4 areas, we're going to hold you accountable. So it's not going to be bagels once a month. It's not going to be some quarterly thing. It needs to be weekly. It needs to be regular. And you want to become more. And that's the thing I actually hear sometimes. I've heard this from Jordan Peterson. He's like, you can be more. And I think when you talk to men, you realize that they know they can be more. They're just not sure why. And I think there's something in their makeup that actually God has put in there that they know they can be more. And so when you inspire them with the scriptures, with the grace of God, with the love of God, not shaming them, but building them up to these 4 areas, now they rise, become better husbands, they get their health under control, they lose weight, they pay off debt, and then they even start growing in the relationship with God. And before you know it, good things are happening at home, good things are happening as a dad, good things are happening, or they want to get married because they're just kind of playing the field, so to speak. And so we're just seeing a lot of really good things out of that.
Man, so much there to unpack. Sky's the limit when you hit those 4 buckets. Amigos, we're on with Pastor Anthony Fleming. He's the pastor at Church Alive, him and his lovely wife, Miriam Fleming. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez here live with Pastor Anthony Fleming from Church Alive here in New York City. We're right next to the Statue of Liberty. We're right next to the World Trade Center. There's so much going on, yet it's a beautiful day. You wouldn't think that back in the day, Jesus was on his way to getting hung on a cross right about now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is a beautiful day outside. Spring is here. Here's what's interesting about spring that I've been thinking about a little bit as I've been just praying and thinking and preparing for the messages is spring itself speaks of resurrection. The seed in the ground that looks like it's dead, buried, it's dark, and then life comes. Winter itself, we're just coming out of a pretty long winter, to be honest, in Jersey, New York, and I'm in Jersey and I'm a little bit northern Jersey, so I feel like we've got longer winter, and I'm like, man, I'm ready for the sun. But winter, it's dark and it's cold, but then life starts to come, and so during these times, I think actually there's parts of nature that even speak to us of the resurrection. And then the other unique thing that I've been thinking about personally is this: the sun rises every day. The sun rises every day, and perhaps God, in times past, was saying, man, I'm going to give them such a sign that one day, yes, my son will die, but yes, my son will rise from the dead, and I'll remind them of it every single day.
Man, you should be a pastor.
Well, I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
Folks, we're here with Pastor Anthony Fleming, and it's an impressive message. And I think there's people listening right now. I know there's a lot of people listening right now that may be inspired by what you've been talking about, and they don't live close enough to Church Alive to participate in person. What do you recommend to them?
First, pray. If you want to get near to God, he says, if you'll seek me with all your heart, I will be found by you. Use the Lord's Prayer as a model for worshiping first, thanking first, asking for your needs, surrendering, forgiveness. Take yourself through the Lord's Prayer. That'll draw you close. But then do find a place where there's life, where there's the gospel is preached, where people's lives are changing, where you can tell there's the best way to describe it, if you've ever walked into a restaurant and you smell the smell, the people in the atmosphere, you'll smell it sometimes in a church. You'll walk in and you'll go, oh, there's something going on here. The people keep on coming back for the great steak, the great chicken, the great whatever they have. In a life-giving church, there will be life change. And there'll be people growing, there'll be people excited, there'll be joy, and you'll find purpose there.
To our listeners that are listening right now and they're saying, man, this guy's great, but he's got it all together. Things are fantastic for this guy. And they're not doing fantastic right now. They're down in the dumps. They're facing something serious. There are people that lost their kids yesterday in a shooting in a school. Yesterday or Thursday, there was the mother of Rachel Morin was in the White House sharing what it was like as her daughter was raped and murdered. And there's so much ugly things, so many ugly things that happen in this life, and there are people dealing with that. And it's great to be upbeat and to feel good about the resurrection. But there are people who just aren't there yet. What's your advice to them?
Gosh, pain is one of our greatest teachers, unfortunately. So when you say life is not fair, when you say life is hard, you're actually agreeing with Scripture that things are broken, that things are not the way they're meant to be, that since the garden it hasn't been fair. And so pain and evil and tragedy has been introduced to the world. But we do serve a Savior who didn't just stay afar. He came close, and not just close, but he literally identified with our struggle, heartache, pain, and then even went through the worst of pains, being crucified on a cross. And so we do serve a God that can identify definitely with our pain. I think it was C.S. Lewis, he said, God whispers to us in our pleasures, but he shouts to us in our pains. And sometimes it simply says, hey, the way you're living right now is not working. I have a better way. And so if you're going through tragedy, obviously, my heart goes out to you, but God is close. He is near, and he's actually near the brokenhearted.
Amen to that. Pastor, let everybody know how they could check out one of your sermons. Are they available online? What's the website? Tell us how to find you.
Hey, YouTube always works. Church Alive NJ, you'd type in, and then churchalive.tv would be where you could see that. Wrote a book recently called Transform. You can check out transformthemovement.com. Any of those stuff is going to encourage your faith and hopefully build your life.
Well, there you have it, amigos. The book is called Transform. Make sure you get a copy for yourself and every single person that you love, and give it to them as a gift. Make sure you do that. Make sure you go to churchalive.tv, stream the sermon. I go to this church. I vouch for the church. Pastor Anthony's got some solid teaching. Sir, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I want to thank you for being here. God bless you.
Thank you, man. It was an honor being here.
My pleasure. More to come straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez, open phones across America. Let's go to Eric, Janesville, Wisconsin, WLS. Eric, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. One of my favorite sayings is, if I come back in the second life, I want to come back as a bond market because I scare everyone. At the end of the day, the only reason the president put a pause on those tariffs because he was scared, by the bond market. He was losing it. Tell me I'm wrong.
I think you're totally wrong. The bond market is the president didn't put any pause on tariffs. He had partners that said, hey, we're willing to make a deal. Had they not said they were willing to make a deal, there would be no pause. It wasn't as if he felt like, oh, my gosh, I went too far. Oh, my gosh, look at the markets. Oh, I made a big mistake. I think none of that's true. I think the bond market is been very shaky for quite a while. All we had to do, look back at what Biden did. Biden was instructing the Treasury or instructing the federal government to buy Treasury bonds just to make it look like there was some stability. So, for example, if Biden were president right now and he would have suffered a shakeup like this, we would never have found out about it because he would have instructed the federal government to buy T-bills, T-bonds, to make sure nobody could see the fluctuation in the market, to make it look like everything was okay, artificially inflating the market. And that's exactly what Trump didn't do. So kudos to Trump for doing it. Eric, thanks for the call, brother. Shout out to everybody in Janesville, Wisconsin. Happy Easter, everybody. All right, amigos, we come back with another hour of stimulating talk. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Good Friday evening. It's a true blessing, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys on open phones across America. Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And, of course, today is Good Friday. We're live, we're national. It's 7 minutes past the hour, and President Trump yesterday gave some remarks on Easter and Good Friday, and I'd be remiss if I didn't play them for you. Check this out.
Nearly 2,000 years ago, during the sacred week, the living Son of God entered Jerusalem in triumph. Soon after, the Savior of mankind, who brought truth and light into the world, was betrayed, arrested, and tried, beaten, and nailed to a cross and crucified. For our sake, he gave up his life, and as the very great Reverend Billy Graham once said, God proved his love on the cross when Christ hung and bled and died. It was God saying to the world, I love you. Those are beautiful words from a great man, Franklin, right? A great man, Franklin's incredible father. I went to Yankee Stadium with my father many years ago to watch your father.
That's President Trump having some comments at this dinner where he hosted Franklin Graham, and then having a sidebar conversation with Franklin Graham, the son of Billy Graham, as they reflect on what it means, right? What the resurrection means, what Good Friday means, the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And it's part of what we're talking about today. Of course, we're also talking about this news of the day, and that includes Mr. Kilmar Obrego Garcia, who had somebody online said, and I thought it was very funny. It might have been Vince Coglianese, and I thought that was funny if it was him. He said he got his conjugal visit with the good Senator Van Hollen. I thought that was very funny, actually. And one of the meme masters out there, the people that are following the social media trend with creating action figures of people and that are kind of funny. And somebody sent me one the other day on a DM, which was very funny. And the one I just saw was of Kilmar Obrego Garcia, and it was complete with MS-13 tattoos, handcuffs, a domestic violence protection order, and an AK-47. Not to mention the Chicago Bulls hat. That was pretty funny, too. But the things that Trump has to go through are just, sometimes they're laughable, right? To see the things he has to endure in order to get his job done. Before we get into the next topic, I want to make sure I get to the phones. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Hillsborough, New Hampshire, WTPL, and check in with Chad. Chad, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. Long-time listener, first-time caller, but
thank you.
It's, you're very welcome, sir. What really gets me is that no one realizes the common sense of what is happening. We have a giant audit of the federal government happening, which should have happened multiple times over the last several decades. And everyone's like, oh, my God, Trump's shutting down the government. Trump's doing this. Trump's doing that. They don't realize the common sense behind it. And that's something that's lacking so very much in this country nowadays is just the common sense, Rich.
Yeah. Something that you're saying, you're making a good point. And I'm just going to add to this, Chad, and say I get my beard done on Fridays. I go to the barbershop, get a little hot towel shave. And I was there with the barber, and, we're talking about China. And he was like, I saw this video. And apparently, the MAGA hats are made in China. And I said, no, they're not made in China. I know they're not because I have a couple, and I got them. And the first thing I did was look to see where they were made. And I know where they're made because I have a buddy in the hat and shirt making business. And he was like, no, that stuff's good stuff. It's really expensive. So bottom line, we're talking about propaganda and how China, uses propaganda to try to fool people and get them to think a certain way to undermine people in this situation, trying to undermine Trump. And we were talking, and it led us into a broader conversation of exactly what you're talking about. And while you're generously putting it as a lack of common sense, I would take it a step further and say we have been intentionally dumbed down. And but for people like you that pay attention, listening to radio, people that read the articles, pay attention to the publications that are putting out really worthy content, and people that are engaged in their patriotism and their civic involvement in the news of the day, a lot of people don't have the time for it. A lot of people are just like, I'm just trying to pay my bills. And all of this is by design. We were talking a little bit about President Reagan and how before he was President Reagan, he was Governor Reagan. And before he was Governor Reagan, he was the head of the Screen Actors Guild fighting off communists from getting into Hollywood, him and John Wayne both. And this is something that was going on. They were trying to get on the silver screen back in the days. Well, guess what? Today they're on everybody's screen because we have the screen in our pocket, and everybody and their mother wants TikTok. And it's interesting to see how that has evolved over time, but it's the same effect. The Chinese have always wanted to spread their communist BS to the American people through our mass media, and now our mass media looks like TikTok. And when you come and say that it's a lack of common sense, I think that may be true, but I guess the point I'm making is that sense overall isn't very common at all because of how we've been led astray by misinformation and disinformation that we get right on our cell phones from the Chinese, Chad.
Right. But so, Rich, it's also take it a step further. But before the Chinese, look at the propaganda machine of the Nazis.
Sure.
With Joseph Goebbels, right? I mean, they told a story that, resonated through millions of people in Germany. It was hard economic times. It was tough to understand exactly what it was. And it was nationalism, right? So it all comes down to context when you get right down to it. And nowadays, people, like you said, the information's in their pocket. It's at their fingertips. It's the sound bites. Going back to President Trump's first term when COVID broke out, I had a partner of mine because I worked in EMS at the time on the ambulance, and he's like, "Well, Trump's telling us to drink bleach." And it's like, no.
I remember that. Drink the bleach.
To a sound bite.
Yeah, you're right. Listening to a soundbite is it. And what's so sad, Chad, is that, that you really can't blame people much for. That's just media literacy. And a lot of people think, well, you can trust the media. Thankfully, they did themselves in, right? They kind of dug their own grave with COVID, where people said, we did trust you. And we trusted you to make sure that you were doing the right thing by us. And I think a lot of Americans, every side of the aisle, realized you can't trust the media. And by the media, I don't mean me or so many others that are out there. I mean the legacy media, the cable news giants, and the broadcast giants. Ultimately, I think people lost a lot of respect for those people and turned to alternative sources like talk radio, like YouTube and podcasts and things like that. So I think you make a good point. Chad, thank you, brother. Happy Easter. And amigos, I want to always remind you You know, it's the end of the week. It's Good Friday. We're about to kick off Easter weekend. But if you struggle with getting good reception, listening to this program or any other radio that you listen to in your home, you got to get the C-Crane CC Wi-Fi 3. It's an internet radio, and it is your solution. Let me tell you why this thing is special. You can connect the CC Wi-Fi 3 to the internet, and you're ready to tune in to over 30,000 radio stations worldwide, including stations that carry my show. Yes, I know, a little egocentric. That's okay. I want you to listen to this show. We need it to keep going, right? It's all about the ratings and reaching people with the truth. And listen, you can do it with no static and no fade. You get voice-focused audio, which surpasses pretty much any smartphone that's on the market. Plus, you don't need to sign into any app. You don't need to sign into any contract. There's no monthly fee. And the device isn't eavesdropping with any microphones that are always on, or it doesn't give you any pop-up ads. I mean, this is really just a radio. And it also comes with a full-size remote control. So you can find whatever type of program you want to listen to, like Rich Valdez, America at Night, while sitting in your lazy chair. This has never been easier. It even doubles as a Bluetooth speaker, so you could listen to your favorite music, podcasts, like mine. And I want to emphasize like mine. That's Rich Valdez, America at Night. Now, to order the CC Wi-Fi 3, just call C-Crane. Where? 800-522-8863. Or visit C-Crane online. Again, the number, just so you have it, 800-522-8863. And the website, ccrane.com/rich. I'll spell it out for you. That's ccrane.com/RICH. And use code RICH, R-I-C-H, at checkout. You're going to get 10% off any order that's $75. It's also available on Amazon, so you can go check that out now. Get one for yourself, get one for the people that you love, and I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So, folks, President Trump's tariff policy has been reshaping how we do things, and one of the ways they do that is with artificial intelligence. And something that both the president and Secretary Lutnick from the Commerce Department have mentioned is leveraging the use of AI and robotics to rival the slave labor and child labor that they have in China to become competitive. And I have to say, this is an area where I think it could work. Even if AI isn't perfect, it definitely does a lot of things. I'll make one example. I remember a couple of years back, people were hiring video editors to chop up tape of them doing interviews, like radio interviews, podcast interviews. And that's why not everybody had video of them doing their radio show or their podcast, because it was just too labor intensive. And now you just put a camera on you and there's AI that will chop this video up, transcribe it, choose what they think is the most salient portions of your interview. I mean, what you once needed a producer for. And these things are all available today, right? That's the advent of AI, just in one example that I'm giving you. Now, think about how that can expand and create additional productivity in so many different ways, kind of like what Trump and Lutnick are suggesting. So there is a clip of audio that I want to play for you about DeepSeek, because DeepSeek was probably one of the more recent AI platforms that became popular in the news, and I want you to listen to this.
In January, a little-known Chinese AI lab named DeepSeek rocked the world when it released an advanced open-source model that rivaled those of U.S. tech giants, seemingly using a fraction of their resources. A who's who of AI's juggernauts, from OpenAI to Anthropic, lauded the company's achievements while defending their own progress and methods. President Donald Trump called it a, quote, wake-up call.
So I want to talk about some of the pros, some of the cons of AI from someone who wrote a book on it, Mark Beckman, Senior Fellow of Emerging Tech at NYU, and he's got a book called Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. Mark Beckman, welcome.
Oh, good evening, Rich. It's such a pleasure to be on with you tonight. Thank you so much for having me. And I am also in New York City, not too far from you, so it's great to be with you tonight.
Well, thank you for that. I really do appreciate it, Mark. And let's talk a little bit about this, because I think some people, and probably rightfully so, are skeptical of AI. Others, I think, are excited about AI. I think there's a lot of differing thoughts and views, and likely there probably should be. What's your take on it, being that you wrote a book about how it's going to change everything?
Well, I'm very optimistic about it. In fact, I believe that artificial intelligence will fundamentally change the American society within 3 to 5 years. And moreover, I believe that artificial intelligence will represent the largest growth sector within our country, percentage-wise, within the next 4 to 5 years. I think it's going to serve as a catalyst across all industries, from the creative fields to finance, from medicine to even weaponry. And I'm very bullish about it.
Yeah, honestly, I'm with you. And maybe begrudgingly in some ways, but whether I like it or not, I think AI is here. It's here to stay. It's clearly a very effective technology. The other day, a former producer of mine, sent me a write-up about me. And I was like, oh, where's this from? And he was like, no, I asked Grok, the chat GPT type of AI that's on Twitter, who's Rich Valdez or something to that effect. Yes. And this is what it told me. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. It was pretty accurate too. And like with supporting data and numbers and, information about our demographics and who we reach and how many markets we're in. And I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive. I know a lot of humans that probably couldn't do that in that amount of time. And it took this thing 40 or 50 seconds to put that type of thing together. And I thought, this is pretty valuable information, so long as you have someone that knows that what it's saying is actually true and can catch an error should it produce one.
That's for sure, Rich. And what you're referencing is the search component of artificial intelligence. And what I predict in my book, and it's already happening, is that AI search will imminently leapfrog Google. And let's face it, Rich, if you use Google today, or if any of your listeners use Google, the experience is substandard. The advertising is pushed in your face. The text box is small, and then you get a bunch of links where you have to do the research. What you're talking about as far as your friend, Grok or ChatGPT or Perplexity is another great search engine. And just as I was getting on, you were referencing DeepSeek. That's another AI search engine. These search engines are phenomenal because anybody could use them, ask a question, and it, almost in real time, you get an answer. And if you know how to prompt it correctly, you can also have cited sources, accurate data, and a format that you're looking for. So it could be in the format of an article, of a memorandum, of a news story, whatever it is that you're asking these AI search engines, it will spit it out that way. And today, already 10% of the population in America has elected to use AI search engines rather than Google. So it's already making its move.
It's already starting to happen. Mark Beckman, stick with us. We're going to come right back and talk a little bit more about your book, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. Amigos, keep it locked right here. We're coming right back with Senior Fellow of Emerging Technology at NYU, Mark Beckman. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation this Good Friday evening. And, of course, your calls and more are coming up. Open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to continue our conversation with Mark Beckman, Senior Fellow of Emerging Technology at New York University, my alma mater, Go Violets. And his book, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. Mark, tell us about, I guess, more about it. We started this conversation, and I agree that I think AI is a huge tool or component of what the future looks like. Tell us more about what you've written about and how you see it unfolding.
Sure. Well, here's the thing. I wrote the book through the lens of an individual who is not a techie. I own an advertising agency in New York City, and we go across many industries. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to provide people who are curious about artificial intelligence, beginners really, Rich, with the tools to start to use AI today so that they can enhance their careers, improve their family life, and also improve their city or their community. So in a really simple way, I walk them through several different business sectors, from fashion and art to finance and medicine. My favorite chapter is the evolution of war, the post-nuclear period, I call it. And after each chapter, I provide the reader with the exact tools that he or she could access today. I name and list all of the tools with websites and references. So you and I were talking earlier, a really great way to start, beginners to start, is with AI search engines like Perplexity, ChatGPT, and Grok. But there are so many other tools that are available if you want to create video, if you want to create song. Yeah. You were talking earlier about editing tools. And my book lays it all out, really, for people like you and your listeners who are curious and want to start with it, but don't know where to begin. All the tools are right in my book.
Yeah, let me tell you, that's definitely a good resource, a good tool. I can tell you, I'm not a very techie guy myself, even though of the two of us, you're the Senior Fellow of Emerging Technology. I'm not. But I venture to say I'm less techie than you. And I have seen some of these really cool AI things that are relatively easy to use, that are very kind of intuitive. And I think that's very helpful, especially for small business owners, entrepreneurs, those that need that extra set of hands and really can't afford to hire that extra set of hands.
That's for sure. The thing that's interesting about artificial intelligence is the efficiencies that it's creating, and also leveling the playing field for small businesses and for entrepreneurial types of people versus the bigger legacy industries. So imagine if you're starting up a new company and you want to create an ad campaign, but you could never, ever have the budget to compete with some of these big legacy businesses across all industries, right? Well, now with artificial intelligence, the efficiencies come in two different ways. Let's say you want to stand up a campaign. You could literally do it tonight. So from a time perspective, it's very efficient. But from a cost efficient, it's remarkable. I have a client of mine that's a retailer, a national retailer, and the chief marketing officer says to me, Mark, I need to move from 6 or 7 different images per season, spring, summer, fall, winter, and then holiday, into 1,000 images per month, just to compete across social media. And what we were able to do is leverage artificial intelligence to generate a ton of imagery for this campaign on a monthly basis, and also isolate segments. So now if you want to talk to, very specific demographic profiles, you could use AI literally with a quick prompt. If you could use a text prompt and write in what it is that you'd like to see, what it is that you'd like to create, in almost no time, you could stand up a campaign. In fact, you mentioned that you went to NYU. I had my students build product design. They did a name, a logo, a new product, primary packaging, secondary packaging, in-store environments, and video ad campaigns, and they were all business students. None of them were graphic designers. So the tools that are available today really are game changers. like I said earlier, the efficiencies for small business owners are incredible.
Outstanding. Mark Beckham, let everybody know how they can get a copy of your book, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything.
Thanks, Rich. So my book is available now on Amazon. You could get it on Barnes & Noble, Target, and it's a really good time to buy it, too. It actually sold out of Amazon and Barnes & Noble when it launched, and we just restocked it. The publisher just put it in again. So, again, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. Mark Beckman, Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
Mark Beckman, I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate the conversation. Folks, check out the book, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. Mark, I hope to have you on again in the future and talk about AI-related stuff or even ad agency-related stuff as that, becomes more popular in the news.
Rich, it would be an honor, and if you let me, I'd come down to the studio. I'm literally just a few blocks up from you, and I'd love to sit down with you in person.
Sounds good, brother. Thank you. God bless and have a great weekend.
All right. Happy Easter.
You too. And amigos, we continue straight ahead. We are going to get into your phone calls, your thoughts, your calls, your reactions, and so much more. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. You sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Listen, I like your show. It's the best night show there is. I think you got the best spirit, the best emotions. You're real. You're really a good guy.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Very, very nice. Amigos, we continue with your thoughts, calls, and reactions to what's going on across America at night. And I want to go to Walter, St. Augustine, Florida, WFOY. Walter, go right ahead, sir. Happy Easter.
Hi, Rich. Always practicing my Spanish, so here goes. Nuestros hermanos Rich y Alex, felices Pascuas, la resurrección de Cristo, a ustedes y sus familias y todos en the radio.
Oh, that's beautiful. That was great. I'll translate that for everybody. He said to Alex and Rich, our brothers, we're celebrating the resurrection of Christ this Easter. God bless. And I just have to say that the person that presses all the buttons and makes all the magic happen, Alex is not alone. He's with a guy named Count Delacula. So Count Delacula is here as well on the board, and I don't want to leave him out. But thank you, Walter. I appreciate that. How is Easter treating you? How's Good Friday treating you in St. Augustine, Florida?
Everything's good, Alex. It's a good time of the year for everybody, being saved and all that, and believing and having our faith, and like you always say about the Holy Spirit being with us. So everything's good, and hope the same is for you. And appreciate you taking my call always.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate it, brother. Thank you. And Godspeed to you and your family. Very, very nice call. Let us continue here. Let's go to Boise, Idaho, KBOI, and check in with Paul. Paul, go right ahead, sir.
Thanks for calling on me, Rich. I appreciate it.
Of course, brother.
I was thinking today as I was at the hospital doing my thing that I got to do right now.
And by the way, whatever thing you're doing at the hospital, our thoughts and prayers are with you.
Thank you, Rich. I sent you something in the mail. I hope you got it by now, finally.
It may have arrived at the studio, but I was doing some traveling, so I'll make sure I get to my mail.
Okay.
Shame on me for not getting to my mail quick enough.
Yeah, I don't need to mention it right now, but I thought I'd mention it anyway.
Sure.
I was sitting there thinking about this guy, supposed member of gang member and wife beater and so on.
Oh, you're talking
forth.
about Kilmar Obrego Garcia from the MS-13.
Right, thank you. I was thinking about him and how he's being used as a political pawn, which the Dems always throw that label on the Republicans or conservatives. That's the first thing they throw is he's a political pawn, and they're just using him.
Yeah.
And they're doing the same exact thing. And it's a little bit nefarious because they're going to triple down on this, and they'll take it all the way to the Supreme Court if they can to get the win, because they have one thing in mind, and that's to make sure all 12 million of those people that ran across and jumped the border to get into the U.S. are going to become Democrats. That's what they want.
Paul, I don't disagree with you, but I just want to say, I don't think they have that hand to play in this situation. And the reason why is because this thing already went to the Supreme Court, and the court acknowledged in a 9-0 ruling that the judge did not have the authority to do this. The judge now acknowledging today himself that he did not have that ruling, right? He had been quiet on it, so I think a lot in the media were kind of like, well, hey, blah, blah, blah. Now I think now they realize, hey, the judge isn't saying anything. Oh, wow, he is saying something. He's saying he doesn't have the power to force the hand of the executive branch, and no district judge does, right? This wasn't a matter of trying to figure out right and wrong or make sense of a particular law. This was this judge seemingly trying to right what he believed was a perceived wrong, and that is not, in my opinion, at least, it's not the purview of any judge, at least in that particular scenario, in that capacity. So I'm with you. I think the Dems would if they could. I just don't think they have any more hands that they can play on this particular one. So I think here they have to take the L. Paul.
Well, that's okay. I didn't hear that reading or that what you.
Oh yeah, that's from today. Sure.
Yeah.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned it.
Kind of busy doing something else.
Yeah, listen, and that's probably more important. Always, health is wealth, as they say. Well, brother, I want to wish you a very, very happy Easter. Godspeed to you and everything that you're doing. Our thoughts and prayers are, of course, with you and everything you're doing. And I appreciate it. Happy Easter. Amigos, more from you all, your thoughts, your calls, your reactions to everything that's going on in America at night, straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
3 days later, Christ's followers found the empty tomb. Jesus had defeated darkness and death and promised new life to all of humankind. And that's what we celebrate each year at Easter as we joyfully proclaim on Sunday, He is risen. The death and resurrection of Jesus are the essence of the Christian faith. Whether rich or poor, healthy or sick, young or old, or in times of peace or war, Christians everywhere find solace and hope in the knowledge that Christ died for them and that they could be united with Him in heaven. And that's what we want. That's what we all want. The miracles of Holy Week set in motion a transformation in human existence. Countless millions of Americans have been moved by Christ's example to heal the sick, defend their families, lift up their communities, and make our country stronger, better, and greater than ever before.
That, of course, President Trump discussing the importance of Good Friday and the resurrection. message that he shared yesterday at a speech that he gave welcoming Franklin Graham and others as he talked about the importance of Easter. I want to get to your calls, 833-482-5337 on this beautiful Good Friday evening. Let's go to Marion, Illinois, WGGH, and let's go to Tim. Tim, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Good evening, Brother Rich. "O grave, where is thy victory?"
Mm-hmm.
It's in the Bible.
Yeah. It's actually a passage I read when my mom died, believe it or not. It's, "O hell, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting?"
Yes. Good Friday. I mean, you have someone with the power that Jesus has to take being crucified, being all the pain, could have called 10,000 angels to get him off that cross, but knew the importance, the supreme sacrifice. And, if people would turn to Christ, this whole world would be a whole lot better.
Man, true, very true words, and I definitely agree with that, Tim. It's one of those things, I think that about a lot of things. I think, if people ate less sugar, if people, did better with their diet, if people would exercise a little more, because I was fat for a long time, and I didn't care about what I ate or what I, how I exercised. Think about, if people would give Jesus a chance, if people would, give Trump a chance, if people would just, pay attention to the free markets. And there's so many things that I think are good for people, yet there's so much that we reject. And yet, when it comes to this message that you're talking about, that we're talking about, the message of the redemptive love of Jesus, that's one you don't have to qualify for, right? Jesus tends to give that out unendingly. Right, Tim?
Yes, sir. They give months, different months or for whatever organizations they want to promote. But we have one Christmas Day, we have one Veterans Day, we got one Easter Day, but we got a whole month for remembrance of what I consider non-essentials, just garbage, sinful stuff. But
right,
just one.
Well, I think it sounds as you're saying that. I just want to say it sounds like if anybody in the White House is listening, maybe El Trumpito himself, if he's up late tonight, might be a great idea for him to sign an executive order and say, "I'm going to make April or Easter, whatever month Easter is in, Jesus month." What do you think? Not the best impression, but not a bad idea.
Oh, you do a good one. But there's, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and that's the loudmouth leftist.
Right.
People with common sense, Christian-based, we don't want to act like a fool.
I get you. Yeah,
you
people want to have some proof.
Yes, you got to pray for those that despitefully use you. And I pray for the good and the bad.
Yeah, thanks for those prayers. I appreciate them for sure. Tim, I hear a little bit of an accent coming from you. Is that how people from Marion, Illinois sound? I think or is that from somewhere else? Did you import that from further south?
Oh, no. I was born and raised in Southern Illinois. I'm not Chicago.
Got it. So it's Southern Illinois, not the South per se. Tim, God bless you, brother. Thanks for your kind words and sharing all that wisdom with us. And amigos, have a great Easter, celebrating the resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. At least he's mine. Hope he'll be yours one day too. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.